Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and I'm the streamer for this stream. And we work on a Django app project that's been ongoing for many months. And I walk you through what I know about Django as someone who's been doing Django for many years, and show you what it's like to build a real app. A real app that you can view online as well. I'm looking at the GitHub repo here, and if you want to follow along, there is a code repository at mblehman/homeschool. And you can find it there and see what the code's like. It is a homeschool project. It's a scheduling app that I'm building for my family who does homeschooling, as you might guess. And we're going to continue on that this evening. Before I get started, there are ways to keep up with me. I have a website that you can check out. There's a mailing list there. There's access to me through Twitter and GitHub and all sorts of stuff. I'm usually at the handle of MB Lehman, as you see at my GitHub handle up on this page right now. And what else should I say? There's a Discord link below if you have things you want to chat about. I'm open there. I check it out a couple times a week to hop in, answer questions, and build up some community there. So if you have things that you don't want to tweet about on Twitter or a little bit more involved, you can try and reach out to me there, and I'm happy to try and field questions as I can. Additionally, I have a Patreon, so if you like what I'm doing and you want to support me financially, you can check out patreon.com/mblehman, and there's a few tiers that you can pitch a few bucks in and help me out. That goes to support my ability to do podcasting and other things related to the Django ecosystem, and usually that's what I apply those funds to. Okay, so let's dig into what we're going to work on tonight, and it might be a tricky one. I might be scratching my head quite a bit today because we're introducing something into the scheduling of the application that is potentially quite disruptive. And actually, I just finished dinner with my spouse, who happens to be my customer for this app, and was talking to her about the other pieces that are missing. And I realized that there's even more here that I don't have listed. So I'm going to go ahead and update this issue that we're going to work on and add to it the extra places where this needs to be applied. So we need to add to the course view, and we need to add to the student course view as well. I don't know that we're actually going to get to that tonight, and I'll if we do, I'll explain more details. You might be like, what was he talking about? So if you've never joined in before, my flow for this stream is pretty much just hack on some code and write some tests and be very methodical about it. That's just my nature, is to be methodical to the point where, like, what kind of developer am I? I was actually listening to a podcast today in fact. It's a great podcast, actually. I'll recommend it. It's called Running in Production. If I could type. So this is a good recommendation, I think, if this is your kind of thing, learning about how web applications are built and projects like that. So I'll drop that link there if you want to check it out. But this podcast is all about the way people build projects, and the one I listened to today made me realize that there are vastly different ways that people do development. The person I was listening to, it was an interview with someone who was building a website about COVID stuff and finding people that are sick near you. I don't know the details of that site, and there's actually the interviews from many months ago, so I don't even know how active the site is now. But the person that was being interviewed, he was a very bombastic individual, and he thought about programming in ways that I do not. His model is to be very fluid and leave stuff committed to code that may not be used, and but to go super fast and iterate and just kind of work in that style, almost treating software like clay that he's sort of sculpting rapidly to get what he wants. And if you've watched any of my past streams, you'll know that is not how I work. And in fact, to the point where, like, I run my test suite because I want to check that I have 100% code coverage. Like that's the kind of individual that I am. That I want to make sure that everything is structured in place. And I've got some failures because I've changed some stuff. But I want to make sure that everything's working right and that every line of code is doing what I want it to do. And clearly something has gone wrong. I expected that to be 100%, but I've been playing with this today and have changed some things. So we will we'll talk through like what the code is we're going to change today. We're going to figure out. I guess we're going to start with why the heck why is this test failing now? Something changed. Oh, okay. I know what I changed. I changed the structure of my context data, so this is no longer an accurate assertion. But let's get into it, shall we? So what am I doing? We have the app, and I'll bring up the app so that we have a reference point to look at. The app has it shows school stuff, right? So it's all about showing school years and showing schedules for the students that are in there. And this data that I have loaded locally is my kids. This is my son Mark, and this is data that I've pulled in from his second grade year to use as example data that to make the app look reasonable. But you can see in this view that we have the concept of a week. It's a school week, right? And it has everything that he needs to do for his various courses: reading, math, handwriting, and so on. They're all here. And when the courses don't meet, there's nothing for that day, so there's empty slots in this. And you can see that there's a highlighting, because I'm recording this or streaming this live on Wednesday the 9th. And so that is highlighted in this very light bluish gray color that's here. So all of that stuff is present. But there is a concept that is critical for a school year that I have not incorporated fully into the application yet. And that is this concept of a break day. That's what I've written about in this issue. So the school year itself needs to show breaks. It needs to be able to take breaks. The schedule needs to be able to adapt to those breaks. Because if I didn't offer any opportunity to take breaks, the schedule is always going to have stuff in it. And we may not be ready to do that stuff. Like we may be going on a Thanksgiving break. We're going to go see my family around Thanksgiving time. And like, we're not doing school then. So it would be silly to try and show stuff happening on Thanksgiving and the days surrounding it, and Thanksgiving being a big U.S. holiday. If we're not doing anything, what would be the point? So what I've been adding is this concept of a break day. I've modeled it as a school break. In fact, I think it's time to update the model that we're working from. So I have an ability to generate a diagram of all of the models that we're working with. And for many streams, I've been working with this picture, but frankly, I realized that it's out of date because it doesn't even have this model in it that we're talking about. So let's regenerate that file. What is the target? I have it in a make file. Target that we need, graph. Okay. So we're going to do make graph to generate a new version of our models file. And let's take a new look at it. I don't know what has changed. I've added some new stuff in the interim. So this diagram is slowly getting bigger and bigger. And we'll zoom in so we can actually see things. But here's the new thing that we're dealing with. This model is called school break, and it is the thing that we have to integrate into the schedule. I've already done all of the CRUD operations. So if you're not familiar with, that's create, read, update, delete. All of the basics are there. So it's possible to create breaks. And I have that ability, and I even display them in some places. Like we've got this calendar view, and if you can see this kind of dark yellow color, this is anytime we have a break, it's represented with this yellow pill style. So I'm able to display them, but I've not included them everywhere that needs to logically deal with them. And I've been kind of pushing against it for a long time because it's going to be difficult to get this concept in here. And But it will be like a very critical element of what we need to display for the school year. But I can't put it off any longer. You can see I've been doing everything around it, all these other tasks that build up to it, but I haven't actually bit into this one. And we need to talk about like why is this going to be so difficult? What is it about this weekly view that is challenging? There's a few reasons. So breaks. So what I'm dealing with when I'm dealing with breaks is a bunch of things. The models file. I'll bring them back up. The weekly view has to display a lot of data. It has to query a lot of data as well. It has to kind of synthesize a view of what a student has to do for a particular school year, for their particular grade, for their set of courses, and what are their tasks for this week. All of that modeling is in here, so I could trace you through that exact path. It's a school. It's a school year. Students are up here. They are enrolled in the grade. So it gets complicated. And ultimately, what that week view is showing this model right here. Okay, so those are the tasks that we see. I call them course tasks in the modeling. So each cell in this table is a course task. So that's one thing. And if that was it, that wouldn't be so bad. But there is another layer of modeling that happens here. It's also possible that the work is completed. The view that we have on this local browser is showing everything as in an incomplete state. All of these are very dark black. It's just indicative that things are done. But we can switch that. Oops, I realized I stopped the server, so let's start it up and return to this view. And we're going to mark off a couple of these tasks as complete. Okay, and hit save. And then we will return to the week view. And you can see a difference in what has happened here. So now the tasks are grayed out. In reality, if my wife or any future user who I hope to use is using the site is going through their week, they will see everything basically to the left of this grayish blue bar as grayed out because they've been completing tasks as their week is going on. So that means that when we figure out what the schedule has to display, it's not just this course task, but the way that I'm tracking whether to gray this out or not is actually with a separate model record. Because it has information about it that is not necessarily specific to the course task. It has to be a merger between the course task, the actual chunk of work that needs to happen, and which student completed it. Because I'm trying to model this for a scenario where there could be multiple kids in a certain grade level, or their kids are doing a shared course that applies to multiple grade levels, because homeschool has those kind of scenarios. So I'll have to create this separate model of coursework in order to represent completed work. So that's another layer that goes into this schedule of coursework is something we have to factor in. Additionally, we have to figure in time. And that's probably the most complicating wrinkle of this. If my application was built so that everything always showed just this week, then it wouldn't be that difficult to show what I need to display. Because what I would have to display is basically to say, okay, take all of the coursework, everything that's been completed, and exclude that from the full list of tasks, and then show me 5 of them. Just start with, as long as you take the excluded list and say, give me the first 5 tasks, then it would show you what do you have to do next. What's still incomplete in the listing. And that's actually what this view is doing right now. It's able to index into the database and say, you know what, we just need the stuff that isn't done yet. And so the index that it looks into is excluding all of the completed work and starts at 0 and says, give me 5 tasks. And that's what's going on here with this reading too. Okay, so that, however, is not the full picture, because we also need to factor in the future, because if I look ahead by a week, well, then now what is this thing supposed to show? You can see maybe that some of this stuff changes and doesn't change. Actually, all these kind of changed in a certain way. But the expectation is like all of the work will be completed in this particular week. So if we're looking ahead to the future, we need to anticipate that that work is going to be completed and operate on the assumption that we're going to do everything on the timeline that is laid out by the schedule. And it will recalculate each week, but it has to make some assumptions like that. So when we get to this future week, this is looking ahead to next week, it has to say, okay, I have all 5 tasks are in the last week, and so let's index starting at index 4, because this stuff is 0-based, and get the next 5 tasks. And then, going ahead the next week, get the next 5 tasks, and so on. So that is the logic that gets layered in here. But this is where the wrinkle with school breaks kind of messes with this, because if you have a couple of days off, let's say 9/22 and 9/23 was a school break. It was a 2-day break for whatever reason. Somebody has a birthday. I mean, nobody in my family has a birthday on this day, but we can imagine that there is some reason to take off these couple of days. Maybe there's some vacation. Maybe some family is visiting. Who knows? But these slots are not taken up. The challenge is now when I go to the next week, I have to not only look at the previous 3 or 4 weeks, whatever it was, and say 5, 5, 5, and then index to there, but I also have to subtract out however many break days there were as well. And that would make a new index here that is accounting for that. So hopefully you're getting a sense of this is not like super straightforward. This is the merger of like work to do and time available to do it. And then somewhere in between there is the actual like index when we query the database, because ultimately that's what we're doing, right? We're querying a database, and we need to figure out what are the 5 tasks or however many tasks that I need to display for this. I say whatever for the 5 tasks because there's also like variability of a school year is not even guaranteed to run on 5 days. I've made that configurable. As you can see, like with, let's see, this is a good example. This PE2 class is a class that's only scheduled to run on 1 school day a week. So it has like multiple dimensions on what is the answer for what is the index that you're supposed to look up. All of that stuff is going to make calculation of this particular index that's where it's going to be quite complicated. And that's why I've been pushing it off for a really long time. I wanted to like give myself enough time to absorb the problem and see if there are any obvious solutions that popped up. But the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm not convinced that there are. We're just gonna have to muscle through it and write some really good tests. Think about logical test cases that might happen. Any weirdnesses between the data model, between the relationship between the school year and courses, and having varying day differences and all this kind of stuff is going to come into play when we have to figure out this this scheduling system. Because if I get this wrong, then the data that would be displayed for a week is not going to be accurate. And that's one of the critical elements of what this app is designed to do. It's designed to say, like, what is the work you have to do for this week? But also the way homeschool works and the way homeschool teachers work is they need to know what's coming up 2, 3 4 weeks down the road. And if we can't offer a realistic point of view of here's what it's going to look like for you around Christmas time when you're super busy, then that's going to be bad news. So that's the problem. I probably droned on way too long about what the problem is before we actually are getting to code, but that's what we're dealing with, and we're going to try and crack into it by writing some tests and see if we can just figure it out. I'm gonna do a lot of stumbling through this particular stream. I don't think I'm gonna be, some of these streams that I do, I'm very confident and know exactly what I'm doing. But here we're doing some weird calculations, and this is like new, unique domain logic that is not specific to Django. Like I know Django quite well at this point, but this thing that we're trying to tackle has really very little to do with Django and more to do with like scheduling and homeschool scheduling. So that's where the novelty of this and really the value of this software comes from, is right this kind of thing right here. Okay, so I think I've kind of trumped it up enough of what's going to happen. Let's see if we can figure out what to do. The first thing I want to do is be able to display break days on this week view. Because regardless of what tasks we're planning to display during the week, I know for certain that I need to be able to somehow represent that a break day is happening here. And I spoke with my spouse about like what would be acceptable as an answer for a break day, and the answer that she seemed okay with was, what I'm planning to do is color the background of one of these days with like a green color, and we're gonna have to work through that because even that's not very clear. Like this is not easy in the sense that we're dealing with a columnar view of a set of data when HTML is naturally designed to deal with a row-based point of view, and I'll get into that as we get through this. All right, so let's take a look at the code. I was making some changes earlier today, taking my son to soccer, and with COVID, I'm actually not allowed to be on the field because of reasons. So I was working in the car. I'm working on this app in the car because I could. And I already have this data here where I put the week dates into the view, and this is not displaying very well, so let me try and clean this up a little bit. Let's open this in a horizontal split instead. So we have this context data that is coming from the view, this week version of the view. That's all we need to really think of it like now. And here is the template chunk that gets executed for that. And so what we have is it iterates over each of the week dates, and that's what it's displaying at the top here. Okay? And so I went ahead and like switched it. It used to be like a literal list of dates, and I know that I need to be able to display information about a break. So the break is going to need to know that it is a break or it isn't. So there's a bit of Boolean state that's actually missing here. So as we iterate over these, we're going to need to be able to check on something else. So I switched it from a list of dates to a list of dictionaries, and one of the keys of that dictionary has the date in it. So the other thing that I want to put in here is basically some Boolean that is break day. So I want to be able to ask that question and get an answer back. And I was doing some work earlier, so I already have a method that is attached to the school year that I can ask this question. So I can say, is break, and that's the method, and then I can pass it the week date. And what that should do is it's going to return the Boolean of, is this a break date or not? So the school year has a foreign key relationship to the school break model, and I did some work underneath in the model that I could check out. You can go look at this code on GitHub. It's all up there. But it does the proper searching through the available breaks for the school year, and if you pass it a date, it can intelligently say this is a break or it isn't a break date. So we're going to add that bit to the context, and then what I want to do, just to see if it works, is come into this area of there's a bunch of weirdness here that we're gonna have to deal with. Okay, well we'll deal with one chunk at a time. Again, this is complicated for a number of reasons, but that's okay. So we've got what you can see in this chunk of the template right here is it's doing some calculation. So day is in the context. Day is like the day that we're looking at it, which on the time of the stream is Wednesday 9/9. So it's saying if you're equal to the day, then make the background color gray 100 and do some stuff on the top to round the corners. And so that's what gives it this appearance, because really what this for loop is working on is limited to this top row. We're not even dealing with the other rows right now. So we're going to take this one step at a time. We got to deal with the top row first because we want to display it. So what I want to do is then come out to this area over here after this if statement, and I want to ask the question in the template of, is the week date, is it a break day? And if it is, then I want to set the background color to something besides gray. And so I want to use, I looked at some color before. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and turn off flux so that I can see what it looks like in reality, because everything's going to be yellowed to me personally if I don't. But if we come back here and say BG green 200. All right, so if the way that I'm displaying this stuff is by a break day is going to look like a green, like a column of green, then this is the thing that we need to start with. So let's do that. And I did set, well, if you look at this, you can see that in this example that we're going to work from today, we actually have a break day on the 11th. Actually, I want to adjust that because I want to make it 2 days, because there's going to be some rounded corner stuff. So we'll adjust it to make it a 2-day break, which is going to make things a little bit more complex in different ways, so that our Boolean state might actually not even be enough for reasons that you'll see. So now we've got a 2-day break. And so if we return to this week view, I expect both of Thursday and Friday, the 10th and the 11th, to show up with a green background if I refresh. Okay, there they are. Now, here's where I would love to make this look nice. And you can see it kind of comes all the way down to the bottom. So I would love for this to look like kind of a unit. So for example, this is the first day of a break. So it would be nice if this corner, right where I've got my mouse here, was rounded off on the left upper corner there. And it would be nice if the Friday was rounded off right here, because I can't do what I did in this previous section. I can't just say rounded T large. Let's try it and you'll see why. Let's say rounded T large. And this is a Tailwind syntax to say that it's going to make the top of the container rounded with a large rounding, not a very subtle thing. So if we do that, here's why I think it's not ideal. And maybe I'll live with it. Maybe it'll be good enough. What I don't like about it is it gets the corners over here. That's nice. But it fails on this in-between state. And this is the reason why I changed it from 1 day to 2 days. Because if we return to this, we'll see it, we'll change it back for a second and look at it with a different view. So if we do that and return to this page and refresh, this looks good. This has got the rounded corner. And imagine that the whole rest of this column is also going to be green, and empty with everything else. So I want it to treat it like a big unit of something to look at that is all consistent. And so when it's one day, it looks good. It's got this little dip on both sides. I could conceivably do the same thing on the bottom, and it would all be great. But the truth of the matter is that's not good enough. And like you can think about the same thing. Like if I did that same kind of solution here on this this calendar, then you could see that each of these would appear like a circle if I did it that way. So what I want to do is something similar here, where there is a notion of this is the first day, so it has this kind of style, and a middle day would have no rounding on either side, and then an end day would have the rounding on just the right side for you, I guess. So that's the dilemma, that we haven't exposed enough state about the breaks to be able to make that determination yet. So I might actually revisit how I did that for the calendar, because frankly the calendar view has the right data, and it could be that I need to refactor that out of the calendar so that I can ask those questions about the break and say, is this break a beginning, middle, or an end? Because that's really what I'm trying to get at, is if I'm able to ask, is the break a certain type, then I could get to, in the template, saying if you're a middle, display nothing rounded. If you're an end, display this kind of rounded. And if you're a beginning, display this kind of rounded. And in fact, I think that's going to have to be the solution. So let's take a look at what I did for the schedule and go check that out. I believe it's in here. I might have baked it into the year calendar. This is where I build the schedule thing. Yeah, shoot. So we're going to have to like refactor this, I think, to make this an aspect of the school break itself. So let me see. Now this is even a little bit different, because this calendar is doing different stuff from what we needed the week view to do. It has to factor in the current date when it's making this calculation. I think, where is it actually factoring in? Current date. Get the break style. Oh, okay. Yeah. This makes sense. So what this method that's on this school calendar is saying, like, you're going to be given a date, and you need to ask the question of what kind of style should be displayed. And problem is, I just have this built into the wrong place. Really, what I probably need to do is put a method on the school break that can say what is the style of that break. And this is actually even gets gnarlier, because when we're dealing with the views file that we're at, we don't have the breaks available to us. Like when I was putting this break day thing together, I'm asking the school year, is this even a break? So what I really need to do is probably two things. I probably need to say, put an is break day here, and then I'm going to need a method on the school year. It's starting to feel weird and wrong as I'm talking through it. It feels a little strange, because let's think about what I'm doing. I'm asking the school year for the style about a break. That doesn't make sense. That's too much. Like, why would a school year need to know or need to be able to report back the style of a particular school break? That's not right. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is refactor this. So let's sketch out what this will look like in this new revised version. Instead of doing a list comprehension, we're going to have to do something a bit more complex, I think. And I've got a to-do comment there. Ignore that to-do comment for now. That's something that we'll have to do later that I may not even get to this stream. So we're going to start with a list, and we're going to say for week date in school year, get week dates for, oops, that's not right. Get week dates for, and then pass it the week. And essentially I'm going for this part of the comprehension. So we'll comment this out for now just so we can keep looking at it, but that's not really what we want. And ultimately what I want to pass to the context is the week dates will be this list of week dates that I'm putting up here. So the intent is week dates is going to be built in each of these loops. And the unfortunate part, I think, is that we can't do this in a comprehension because I think there's going to be too much code. So ultimately what I'll probably do is we're going to kind of sketch this out with the actual code change. And if it works, then I'll probably refactor it into a local view method. Because this what we're doing is logic that is definitely something that is coupled between the view and the template. So that I feel like that's the appropriate place for this logic. I know some folks will say like put very little logic into your views, and they're right. Like so the fact that we're dealing with methods on the model is correct, but when it comes to like what is the contract between what is the template doing and what is the data that we're passing to the template, what's the context, that I feel like that the view is the appropriate place to put that kind of logic. So we'll say we're gonna give this a terrible name. We'll say week date data, and it's going to be a dictionary, and we're going to repeat what we already had, which was the week date like this. And I don't want to go too far without checking it against, because I'm not writing any unit tests right now. So we'll do this, and we'll say week dates append week date data. All right, so if well, I guess we did break it a little bit. So let's bring it fully up to including everything, which is add is break day, school year, is break week date. Okay, so now this is, hopefully you agree with me that this list comprehension right here is equivalent to this for loop. So I would not, we're destructuring a list comprehension in a way. And I would not normally recommend this, but the reality is we're going to put additional logic in here. And as soon as you need multiple statements, a list comprehension is no longer a viable option. So that's what's going to happen here. So I think we can go back and check this view. So this should stay the same, although I think we changed this back to the 10th, so it might highlight both of these. Good. Okay. We're where I want to be right now. We're back to the state before I removed commented out the list comprehension. Now we've got a for loop. It's kind of gnarly, but it kind of has to be. All right, now we need to change and stop using is break. And so what I need to do instead is use a different method on school year, and we'll get the school break. And I can't just call it break because break is a reserved word in Python. It would be nice if I could. And we'll say school break and get break week date. I know this, whoops, nope, not school break twice. School year, get break, week date. Okay, I know this method because I wrote it. this will optionally return a school break. So it may be a school break or it may be none. So the checking for is break day is essentially a re-implementation of what is break does. And we'll do school break is not none. That's the, it is a break day. So now if we do that and refresh, nothing has changed. We are functionally equivalent. Okay, so this is where I want to get more out of this, and this code doesn't exist yet. We're gonna just hack it in, and yeah, go from there. So break style is going to be equal to school break. Well, shoot, school break maybe none. So we're not going to do that. We're going to put it. So we're going to say conditionally. This is kind of why we couldn't do the list comprehension. So we're going to say if it's a school break. So if the school break is not none, that will be a true statement. And then we'll say week, date, data, and give it a new key and say break style is equal to, and this is the method that doesn't exist yet, of school break get. I feel like saying get break style would be repetitive, so I'm just going to say get style. You know what? More than I think about this, is that even the right thing to say? Style is like, that's really tied to this concept of the template, and that was true for the calendar, but I don't think that that's the reality, right? Like if what we're really talking about is a break day, any day of a break can be one of a few different types. It can either be a beginning, middle, or an end, or it can be an individual if the start and the end date are the same. That's where you would show it like a pill, like a one unit kind of thing. So really, what the question is we're wanting to ask is not what style are you, but we're wanting to say what type are you? What type of break are you? But type is also can be a very generic word. And I think I want to avoid type because I think there's a future where this school break is going to get more complicated. It's going to eventually represent like field trips. So type might ultimately mean like, is this a field trip? Is this a vacation? Is this something like that? And that seems more appropriate for type. So this is more like a specific type related to the timing. And as I'm saying this out loud, it's not only that, it's not something about the break. It's about a day within the break, because a break can represent a range. It does represent a range of dates. It has a start date and an end date. So really, I guess what we're kind of after is the date type. And if we pass it a date, that's sort of what the reality is. Man, that does not format well on with black. All right, one thing at a time. Okay, so now we've got I've got a method name that I feel reasonable about, because now this is something that like it is only going to have a single type. Like I'm not going to say there's different kinds of dates within a single break. The only break type information that I would care about within a break is, are you the beginning, are you the middle, are you the end, or are you an individual? Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. So we really want to call this something different, and I think I want to say date type. That probably is the most meaningful thing to me. All right, but now if we run this, it's going to blow up in my face because school break doesn't have that method. So we need to write that method. We don't need the template right now, so let's go return back to the year calendar thing, because all the logic really is in here. And you can see I've given these names as well. So we're gonna probably migrate these names into the model as reality. And I think when I did this stream that I wrote this code, I said like, well, we'll put this here for now, and if we ever need to move it, we can move it. And here we are. It turns out we need to move it. It's a concept that I didn't realize was going to be reused in other places. So where we have single, start, end, and middle, those are the date types that go along with the school break. So how should we represent those? We have options, and I don't know which is best. And we have new options that I haven't used heavily in Django, but let's look at them. So Django introduced in Django 3 new choices types. So, well, I know one name, so we'll start with this one. So we're going to look at the model field reference and go to choices. And is it here? Here we are. Enumeration types. That's what they call it. I was drawing a blank on what the thing was called. So you can see there's this new thing called Enumeration Choices. And it's called, one of them is called text choices, and the other one is called integer choices. And it's just a way to provide like type data that is accessible. And provides it in a way that, like, if I did need to have this information be something that I add to a model, then it would be in a nice kind of cleaned up Python enumeration like thing. But I've not actually worked with this, so we're gonna poke at this and see if it's the right choice, because it would be nice to be able to say like, I'm returning a school break date type beginning enumeration, and that's the thing we're returning and checking in the template. I don't know if that's going to be how that's going to look though, so we'll see. And there's also some assumptions in this method that aren't going to be true for the actual method that we need to implement as I'm looking at this. There's certain things about the way this calendar is built that it can take advantage of knowledge that data structure already has that is not going to be true in the general case. So let's bring up the schools models file and see if we can start putting this in there and see what it looks like. So the thing I want to add is a class of a date type, and it's going to be a models text choices. That's I think what I want to use. I think. Does it need to be a text choices? Does it matter? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it does matter. Because text choices imply like this has more meaning outside of whatever we're using it for. Like in this example, year in school, freshman, sophomore, junior, all of these things have very human readable names that matter. And then the short codes are what's actually being stored in the database. But does it matter if I have a human readable version of the date type? That's not something I'm going to ever display to people. So in that sense, if you don't need human readable names translated, you can have them inferred from the member name. Okay. So we can just like put these down here. But the question is like, do I even need to do a text comparison? I might be able to get away with using an integer choice, and that would be slightly faster. I'm not really looking for speed there. I don't think that's going to matter. But I think that's going to be the simplest solution. I don't know that there's any way that I can... what's my startup about? It's about homeschooling. So my spouse, I have 2 kids, and we are homeschooling my children. They're a 2nd grader and a kindergartner this year. And we haven't been super pleased with the app that she's currently using to manage her schedule. So I'm building this version, which has a bunch of features that exist in the other one, but is entirely to her liking. And the ultimate idea is make something that works for my family, and then if that was the end of it, okay, fine. Then I've got a tool that is great for my spouse, and helps me get through the next 12 years of school that are in front of me. But ultimately, I would like to try and extend that to other people in the country or in the world, I guess even, that do homeschooling, and they might appreciate the same kind of system that my spouse uses. That's the ultimate goal. Okay, so getting back to this date type thing. Yes, so it's just using one tool to manage homeschooling, so that she can keep track of resources and all the things that she needs to. Yeah, I don't know how much integration I'll be doing. That's a good question. I haven't really actually thought about that, because I'm sitting here. You can't see, it's off frame, but I'm staring at a gigantic pile of books that she has. So my wife is a big believer in books, and there's not like a ton of online resources that she necessarily needs to integrate with for her homeschool stuff. But I totally could see that future where I am doing integrations with some other kind of education system. But that's like way down in the future when I have different customers who have different needs. So I think what I'm going to do with this date type thing here is to use an integer choice instead, because like I said, the display text doesn't really matter. It's only something we're going to be using in a template, and like it just doesn't matter. So let's go and give it the names that we expect. So the date types can be one of 4 different states here, I guess. You can either be a single, which is like a date that is just the start and the end of the day are the same day. So there's a break day of 1 day length. And if you're not a single, if you're 2 days, there's 2 states that can be introduced. You can either be a start date, or you can be an end date on that 2-day scenario. And I'm trying not to like point fingers at you in crude ways. Let me read your paragraph here. Oh yeah. That's a good call. Yeah, you're right. There's all sorts of like tech and stuff that it'd be interesting to see like what different families use, what kinds of technology they use. I know that the way that we are at my house, we use like Google and stuff, but we're not big crazy heavy users of Google Calendar, for example. My wife is very much a traditionalist, and like she likes paper calendar. She likes writing things down. So the amount of tech that we actually use in our house, at least that she uses, is fairly minimal. But you're right. There's like we are not representative of all families that are out there, and some people live by their calendar, or they live by a tool like Todoist, and they could totally benefit from having some integrations. So I'm not sure what that would be today. There's a stage where we run our school stuff on a calendar year, and so I'm planning to have this ready for my spouse by January when we start for our next school year. And I want to get it ready for her. She's like currently in the planning stages for her current school year, so she's adding data that she's going to use. And then the weekly schedule, the thing that we've been looking at today, is something when you're actually executing the school year and planning, doing your week-to-week activities. I want to go through a couple of months of that to get her feedback on how it goes, and then I want to start reaching out to other communities, going to various like homeschooling forums or wherever homeschoolers meet, and start inquiring of like what things do we need additionally. Do I use Django for my day job? Yes, I do. I work for as of this stream, I work for Dr. On Demand, and Dr. On Demand is a big Django shop. We have hundreds of thousands of Django code, lines of Django code, tons of APIs. And if you don't know anything about Dr. On Demand, as you can see on our big page here, we do telemedicine. So if you want to do a virtual call and a video visit with a doctor, that's the business that I'm in. I'm in healthcare. So lots of Django. There's well over 80 Django apps or something like that that are in our primary software. So I live and breathe Django all day long for work too. Good question. Thank you. RN4VV, or maybe you say that differently, but that's how I'm reading it. Okay, so we've got date type. It has one of these 4 states. So the middle state is like you have a 3 or more day long break, because you've got your start, you've got your end, and any day in the middle could fall into this middle type. Are we using JS frameworks? We are. So Dr. On Demand uses Angular as its primary kind of legacy JavaScript framework, and are in the process of moving to Vue.js for its other stuff. Frankly, most of our traffic actually comes from iOS and Android, though. So we have native apps for doing video calls as well. So there's a ton of usage in iOS in particular. When you do, so this is getting a little off tangent from what we're doing here, but that's totally cool. When you do Django and front-end clients, there's tons of good tools. The most popular, and the one that we're actually using at work, is called Django REST Framework, which is a really powerful tool that does tons of stuff. The basic idea is building up JSON APIs. So users will authenticate using a variety of schemes, that like token authentication or sessions, or there's all sorts of different ways to authenticate, and use REST endpoints to query for particular API data that's needed to power the application. And the applications, the clients, the front-end clients, speak to Django through REST APIs. Yep, so that's what I'm doing. What you're seeing here today in my side project is I am personally doing server-side rendering. So that is Django's out-of-the-box experience. Has a whole template system, so you do server-rendered HTML and throw up a page like the page that we've been staring at here. There's like almost zero JavaScript in this. There's a tiny bit. Actually, this page might be zero JavaScript entirely. So this is all server rendered HTML, and there are Django views to power that. But you don't have to. There's nothing like that says that you must do that with Django. So what Django REST Framework does is it adds a layer on top to make it easier to build APIs. You can also build APIs. It's totally possible with stock Django to provide JSON responses that would be used by a front-end client like a React or whatever. But there's not a ton of tooling built into the framework to support that. So when if you actually like getting into the real stuff about what it takes to build APIs, I mean, Django REST Framework is like a treasure trove of stuff that you could learn about all of the layers that you don't think about in a typical API. The API guide that's here has a ton of different topics that are things that apply to, I want to say, any API. That REST Framework has to consider them, but if you were doing Node, if you were doing PHP, if you were doing some other Python framework, all of that stuff still applies here. You still have to think about authentication, permissions, caching, throttling, pagination, versioning. Like all of these things are generic concepts that apply to REST endpoints. So what I love about REST Framework is that it has pretty much answers to all of those major considerations. It's not a perfect framework, but you can put together a really solid API really quickly by adding this one layer on top of Django. So what Django provides when you're building an API-driven site, what Django is providing is mostly the model layer, the database interaction, the Django RM, a lot of the view logic that we're seeing here, like we're spending most of our time in an actual Django view, kind of gets thrown out the window, and you plug in Django REST Framework instead, which is ultimately, if you scratch below the surface, is Django views, but they're doing a lot of that management themselves. So if you're looking to build a rich client front end, Django can totally do it, and I would check out Django REST Framework. Thanks for the questions, though. It's good stuff. So I'm going to add, this is the date type that we're going to use, and I just realized I put it on the wrong model, put it on the school year, so it doesn't belong here. Let's take it to the school break model. Come down to here and add this text. It's not even a text choices anymore. That's not right. Is it breaking? No, it's not breaking because we haven't used it. We really want the integer choices is what we want. Because again, I'm not using the string version. I'm not displaying this stuff to anybody. This is just going to be data that we do comparisons against inside of the templates. So we add this data type, and I'm gonna kind of hack in the view or the answer that I think it's gonna be. Yeah, and we'll write tests later for this if we need to. I don't know if we're going to get time to that. So we want to say, what did I call it? Get date type? Yeah. So it's going to take a self parameter, and it's going to take a date, but it's not, I just don't want to pass it in as date because that's like a reserved name from the standard library. So we'll call it break date. That's what we can check against, and get what is LSP? Is that language server protocol? Is that what you're asking? So the answer is maybe. I'm using what is the name of the plugin? Well, let's go look, because we can. Why am I drawing? Like, it's a really popular Vim plugin too. Here it is. It's a plugin called You Complete Me, and I want to say that more modern versions of You Complete Me. What does it integrate with? It integrates with Jedi, which I think uses a language server to do code completion. I could be making that up though. So when you see me typing and you see like stuff, providing me options for what to type in Vim, I don't know if it's a language server protocol. It's coming from this plugin though, and I guess if you want to figure out whether You Complete Me uses LSP or not, that's something else. I don't know. Cock? I don't know how to say that one. That's But I'm not sure. I've heard of that one before. All right, so get what type a break date may be. That's a terrible doc string. I'll probably clean a bunch of this up later. I just want to have something there to remember to like do something specific with it later. Sorry, I'm getting a little frog in my throat too. So I guess I've been doing quite a bit of talking. So what we're going to do is compare like a lot of this stuff here. But it's not going to be quite this implementation, because in this implementation over here, current date, by the time I was calling this method, I knew there was a break. So you could either be the single start or end, and if you weren't one of those, then you had to be a middle because of when this was called. But the reality is, when it's given any random break date, it needs to be able to return nothing. So we probably need to actually consider that. Maybe that even needs to be a break type that's missing here of, what do we call that? Start, we've got single, start, end, middle. External, not a break. I don't know, that's a terrible name. I don't know. Some better name will come to me, maybe later. But we're going to get a break date given to us, and we can check, if the start date and the end date of the instance are there, then it doesn't matter like what date was passed to it. Well, yeah, it does. So we're missing a condition before this. So we probably need to do this not a break checking before we get to any of these lower ones. So to do not a break. Okay, so we're going from the assumption that it is in the range though. And once you get to there, then if you can say that the start date and the end date are equal, then we can say self date type single. We know that. So it was called current date in the other thing, but we're going to call it break date here. So if the break date is equal to self start date, then it is a start type. And if the break date is equal to the end date, then it is the end type. And if it's none of those, if it's none of those, then self date type is equal to the middle. All right, so that's the cases where the break date is definitely within the range. So, but we do need this one more. We need to check if break date is less than self.start date, or break date is greater than self.end date, then it's the not a break type. I don't really like that name, but again, I'm drawing a blank on if there's a better name. And all of these have early returns, so we don't need to make this a big elif. If elif statement, that doesn't really matter, because each one will bail if it's going to do a check, and then it will, it'll hit this terminal case because it can only be a middle if it's still not found a case that matches. All right, so that was quite a bit of work for nothing to show for it yet. But I think that we are in a position to now do something about it. what's next. So if we have a school break, we get the date type, and what's ultimately what's going to happen here. This method's going to be called, and it's going to calculate one of these. Each one of these is actually an integer. So we've got a nice name for it, but datetype.middle is nothing more than a fancy name for 4. So that'll put in a 4 into this dictionary, and we'll have that available to us in the context. The question that we need to answer is how we're going to access that in the template. But I think that we will have that data. So we're going to then return to the template, and I'll clean. Let's not worry about this thing. I'll clean this up later. I'll reuse this to. I'll revisit this afterwards. That you guys don't need to see me fiddle with this stuff. So let's return to the week schedule stuff. And we'll go back to week dates. And let's see. Now we want to know. So I've kind of made this a little bit more semantically accurate. And this is getting to be pretty nasty on a single line. But the nice part about CSS or HTML with classes is that the closing string, like, it doesn't care. Browsers don't care if you have classes beyond multiple lines, so we can do this. And my editor kind of hates it a little bit. It hates that I do this, but it does make it possible to see what's in here. So we'll wrap it like that. And now we're going to check. Okay, so we definitely will have, if you're a break day, you want that green color. Now we want to have something else here. So I guess we can do this. Let's get real crazy about it. Again, white space, like the actual, if you look at the rendered version of this, it will look kind of nasty, but your browser will parse it just fine, which is nice. So if we're inside of this if statement, we can drop this rounded, well, we'll need it for one of the cases. So we'll say, now we need to do if week date type. Oh shoot, we didn't put in the school break. All right, screw this Boolean. We don't need this thing. We'll just say school break. Put that literally in the context and do this. So now we've got that there, and then we'll come up to here and we'll say if there's a school break. So if week date that has a school break, then we'll do some stuff. All right, that is actually very declarative of what we have here. So we're going to say if there's a school break, then you're going to make the background color green, and then we need to answer stuff about the date type. And so we want to say if the date type is equal to, and this is where we get to, like, where do we access the actual date type enumeration? So we can access it through the date type instance because this is class data on the model. So we can say school break date type, and then we can say single. And if we do that, then if you're single, then you're going to be the top will be rounded large, both sides. All right, this is where we're going to need a tailwind to keep me honest about what are the rounded options. Because it's just long. There's a big list of them somewhere. Come on. Oh, they cleaned up. They used to list them all out. So I guess they just are cleaning them up with this kind of style here. So, here's the corner separately. That's what we need. So if you're that, elif the week date type is equal to week date school break. Man, this was foolish. I didn't need to type this all out again. If you're equal to a start, then you're going to be a rounded start is going to be on the left side, right? For you, left side. Rounded, is it TL? TL, top left, large. Okay, and then we need one more. We actually don't even care about middle because we'll just leave it alone. And we're going to change the start to an end, and then we'll do, instead of TL, we'll do TR. And I think that's it. I think that's the stuff that we care about. Because not a break's not going to come into play because we're doing the check for the school break here. And middle, we don't care about the styling on either side. So in theory, I did all this right. And we'll have some nice rounded corners. Hey, cool. It was a lot of work to get some stupid rounded corners without a dent in the middle, but I think it's going to be worth it when we get here with the final result. How much more do I want to carry on? Because the other thing that's here that I've observed about this is that, there's nothing to say, why is this date green? And should it be green, actually? Maybe it should be this yellow color. If we already have this deep, rich yellow, maybe it should be that color. Because that's going to be like semantically similar. What is it? Oh, here's an example of where like the HTML is totally wacky. There's like multiple lines, but it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It looks like it's a yellow 500. So let's see what that looks like. Let's change it to yellow 500 and see how that goes. So it's now this nice golden color. I don't know. I'm going to let my customer be the voice for like, that's dumb, or that's not what I want to see. Because she might look at them and not be able to quickly derive the connection between this weak view and this thing, because I stare at this data like way more than she does in some sense. So it may just not resonate with her. But I'll leave it as yellow for now, because why not? So we've got yellow. The next thing to do is we need to show if the break days we've got them for the week dates, but now we need to like push that information into the schedule as well. So I call this table a schedule because that's what it is. It's a schedule of what the student is going to do for each of their courses for the week. And so there's code that says like, what is the student's schedule for this week for our given school year? Please display it. And so I need to be able to bring the school break into that as well. I don't know if we're going to be able to do all of that pretty easily or not. I'm trying to think of just how much I want to try and tackle tonight. Because I could leave it with a big mess on my hands, if I'm in the middle of something. Well, we have this get date type now, so that I have that method. And we have the ability to ask for a break from the school year. So I think we might have all the information. All right, so let's leave this template alone for a minute. Now let's go to where the schedules are built for the student. And you can see in this view here, the way that we build a schedule is we loop through all of the students that are in the school year and say, give me your week schedule, and passing in the school year and what's the current day and which week do you care about. And you have to pass in the current day because it's like it needs to know whether it needs to highlight that stuff and It kind of it's a little bit of mixing of like logic as well as display, so it's not the cleanest thing ever, but it's was workable. Anyway, the point is all the actual stuff that's building it together is put in the models file. So we need to go over to that file to even try and explore this. So here we've got the student model, and we've got the week schedule right here. And the way that this view is actually built together, actually, let's look at the page source. Whoa, what's going on there? It is not liking that. Curious. Well, I'm going to leave that alone. So each of the parts in this table, it's not really a table. A table's a lie. This is actually a bunch of flex rows that are stacked on top of each other, and they happen to line up very carefully to get the illusion of being a table. I did that for a variety of reasons. Tables or flex boxes are way easier to style, in my opinion, than tables. Tables have a lot of like weird quirks, but it does mean that you have to be really careful with like sizing, because if you get any of these things wrong, then the illusion of being a table is completely broken. But because it is a bunch of flex rows, like it's literally, if I inspect this element, you can see, if I get the right scope, each of these is a row. So it's not structured, and this is true of all HTML, it's not structured in the form of a column first. So what we actually need to do is get into a particular cell and know at that cell, we need to say like, okay, what you really need to show here is no data, and that treat this like a break, and like show this in gold or whatever color I'm doing. So in order to do that, the template's going to be the thing that's doing the styling, but we need to have the data added to the schedule to say, hey, wait a minute, this cell right here for this course is actually a break day. And anything else is immaterial. Don't worry about it. So we need to come into here and figure this out. We need to ask, like, is there a break day for this date? And so you have to get down to what is the right, where are the dates available? And then, so it's like deeply nested here, which is not great. There's probably more that should be done here, but to make this nicer. But I think it's not going to be hard. What I'm going to do, I think, before we end this evening, because I've been running on for about an hour and a half, is I'm going to hack in the school break, and then I'm going to try and get that to display in the table. And there's probably it's going to display probably a bunch of extra stuff that we don't need to, but that's okay. So now what? The week. So let's just say course schedule item, because that's the cell, is this course schedule item. And we're going to say the school break is set to the school year. School year is available to this method. And we'll say get break on the week date. That might be it. Wouldn't that be just stellar? In fact, since it's going to be needed for all of them, then we can say, we'll actually put it here in this first constructor and not add it in a separate call line. Like, that's not necessary. So we'll say school year, get break, and pass in the week date. So this is going to be either none or a break. And that's enough for the template to conditionally act on that, which is nice. In fact, we could probably bail out on a lot of other processing if we needed to, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. So let's return back to this template fragment that we have and come down to, I called it something, this was stupid. I called it something different in the template, but that's what we have. So we have a new condition basically. And so I'm going to change this to an elif because I want the school break stuff to like come before anything else. If the course scheduled day has a school break, then all we really care about is that it be background color of that yellow, right? So, oh shoot, is this I don't even know if this is the right thing to do right now. Well, let's put something here. Just some letters for the moment. Because I think what we really need for the styling is going to be up in this particular div. Maybe. All right, let's see what happens. Refresh. Whoa. Okay. So I screwed this up because these were just, they're not div tags. These other ones, you'll notice that everything in this if block is a div tag with a flex and a certain amount of padding. That's the bare minimum of what is required. So maybe what I'll do is copy this particular div tag, and my flex just went out for an hour. It's been over an hour since I put it on flex. So we'll clear this out, and what am I gonna do? I'm just gonna delete all this stuff for the moment. I just want to see if it fills like empty spaces. All right, awesome. It did. So it filled the cell, and then it has the line still in between. So I think what I want to do is to say, go up to this item here. Nope. No, I think it is here. So it might just be BG yellow 500. Well, it should fill in all of those, I think. All right. So there's a couple of observations about this. The first one is that it doesn't have the rounded corners on the bottom. And that's a chunk of logic that I removed that I need to bring back in. And so we need to do this. If it's the last row, we need to bring this in. It's still not going to be quite right, and you'll see why. Let's just plop that right in here. So if you're the last row, then add the rounded bottom large. But what it's going to do is the same dent problem that we had earlier. So we need that to be smarter. The other thing that you can observe is the divider that I have. I don't know how well this actually comes through in the stream. I presume it comes through well enough. The divider here is showing a lighter yellow. I'm kind of torn if I want to keep that or not. And also, as I'm looking at this, like, it's this big block of what is this? So there might be something, I might need to put some extra something in here to know that this is a break. Because otherwise it just looks like a big blob of yellow. Well, I'll stew on that. Let's do this part though. So we'll do the same trick that we did before. Again, we're going to punt on white spacing because it doesn't matter. And I'm going to just refresh to see it. Yeah, it doesn't matter. And we're going to take the same stuff from up here, these same if statements, and we're going to have to tweak them just a little bit, but shouldn't be too much. So now instead of top, they're bottom. So replace this with bottom, oops, not, and bottom. And we need to get, shoot. Well, the schedule needs more information. Okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to fix that part right now because I didn't add that date type stuff to this schedule method that's in the models file. Like I'm still just putting in week dates. And that's not right. But can I quickly, maybe I can quickly, yeah, I could probably quickly update that. Let's put it on the course scheduled day. Say course scheduled day, date type. And change these to school break, these week dates to school break, or this other thing as well. So we now need to add date type to the course schedule day on that model file, which we can do. So we can say if course schedule item school break, so if there is a school break, then we want to do course schedule item date type of, oh, this is going to look nasty, but I'll clean all this up later. Course schedule item school break, because we want to check against the school break, and then we want to say get date type and pass it the week date. That looks absolutely awful, in my opinion, but I think it's the right code, which can be cleaned up. Now if we refresh this thing, it didn't work. All right, why didn't you work? Oh, because we have the large here. We don't want that anymore. Oh, awesome. Look at that. We've got this. And maybe we want to say, let's try it with, see if we can fix the border. So, oh, shoot. That's at a higher level than these individual days. I don't know how we could do that. Rats. Okay. Well, I'm running out of steam, like mentally. It's getting pretty late for my time. And I think we've done some good progress. It's not finished, but you can kind of see where it's going. It's we're gonna have this here. I don't know this is the right color, but the concept is here that we are clearly like blocking off something different about days that are a break. I don't know if I will ultimately put kind of a label in here that says like break day. That might be the right answer. In all likelihood, I will probably like bump out a little bit above the date and say break day or school break. or something, whatever she wants. And that way there'll be some sort of visual indicator of what is this big yellow blob that's here? Why is this here? Because if you don't have that, then it could be confusing. I'll also need to figure out, I do think it's going to be nicer if these yellow lines are not there. I'm not going to change the yellow lines kind of universally just to make that happy. I mean, I could. Let's see what it would look like if I did that. So because it's only off by a little bit. If we change it to 500. Okay, so there's like very clearly, just by that, oh gosh, that's so massive. By that little bit of color change, suddenly this becomes something substantial. Like clearly there's a barrier here. Like this is something different and solid. But the yellow is really intense, and I don't know that it's the right color. What if we did this? What if we, instead of yellow 500, use the same 400? So it doesn't have to match the calendar exactly. Guess we need to fix up the other area too. Yellow, where's the other one? Yellow 500. There it is. All right, well, maybe that's the most minimally invasive change to make that work so we don't have to mess with the borders. Well, I don't know. It's kind of cool. The other thing I'm looking at here is this runs right up flush with the gray color here on that day. I'm not really digging that. So I might want to like add in a certain amount of padding on each of these. I don't know if that's gonna, it might mess up the table. It might mess up the table. So well, let's try. We're gonna ignore, I'm gonna break this the week dates aren't gonna match up quite right away, but I'm gonna try switching this to padding of 4 and see what that does. Ooh. Wrong way. Less padding. It's just shifting stuff over. So let's leave it back at 2, but let's see if we can put some, maybe it might actually be margin that it's missing. Kind of, geez. See, this is where you can see like this table, this Flexbox stuff, it really matters. It matters to get everything just right. And if you don't, it gets really wonky. What could I do? So clearly margin 2 is not correct. What am I looking for? I'm looking for like a bit of white space to separate this edge right here. And the same thing is going to be true on Friday. I just kind of want to tighten in the sides of it so that it doesn't look like it's taking up the full frame. Maybe I'm getting like a little over into the design right now for what it is at this point in time. This might be completely sufficient for what my spouse needs. Actually, let's poke on it a little bit. So let's see what it looks like if we change it to a single day. And what does that look like? Okay, 1 day looks kind of nice. Let's change it to 3 days. Include the day we're just looking at. I'm just trying to see how this is going to feel. Whoa, what happened? That's weird. Oh, because it is the current day. Oh, jeez. All right. What is it doing? it's coming in here and it's saying because the day, where is this applying? Oh, it's on the weekday stuff. Here it is. So it's rounding the whole top if the day matches, and it shouldn't be doing that. So I think if I really want is to make this an elif clause. So that it only does that stuff if it wasn't a school break day. Whoa. Oh, okay. Got an extra end if. There we go. Big, solid chunk of stuff now. The question is my spouse going to want to see the highlighted day? I don't think she's going to care. Although in theory, she could. She might say like, I want to see this lighter. But I think I will cross that bridge when we get to it. So again, like stylistically, like it would be nice to kind of tighten this up just a little bit so that it's not pushing right up to the edge of the next day or the previous day or the next day. Or that's how I'm feeling about it. Oh, there's another interesting one. So the current day is like, it's really screwing with the rounding. Huh. Little bugs popping out. Because I would have expected the break to appear, I don't know, below the 9 or not, the 9 not show at all as blue. I don't really know. Okay. Anyway, that feels like a good enough stopping point for me. There's a lot of stuff I didn't do tonight, especially considering I led off the stream saying like I tend to be a very methodical person. So this is very out of character for me in a bunch of ways. There's all sorts of tests that are missing. This is what some people might call a spike or an experiment, where I spent the time like learning about how I want things to be displayed. And I guess I do that on occasion. I can promise you that none of this will be committed. That's where I draw the line, I guess. I won't commit it in this format. So I will spend the time cleaning this up, writing tests, refactoring the code that I didn't touch, like that year schedule stuff that I said it was like duplicated. That all needs to be cleaned up. So the implications of making this change and moving this get date type, like everything kind of center around the creation of this method this evening. Moving that stuff up a level into the models has ripple effects that like I want to have my models be well tested. So that thing needs tests. It's not going to be a hard thing to test. It'll be basically having a single break and passing in a bunch of dates that are, some that are before, some that are on the day, some that are in the middle, some that are, so on. I think you get it. And testing that stuff. And then, there are other pieces that this is impacting that I am not showing you, frankly. It's other stuff that is part of this for covering certain edge cases. But, like I said, I'm sort of running out of steam, so I think this is a good place to stop. Hopefully, you got to see what my brain was going through with some of this stuff. The most complex bits of logic, we're still kind of ignoring. There's still, like, I can put this stuff and display it and mock it up, but it's the bits of data that are around this that matter. Like when I jump ahead, well, you got to see the server running to actually jump ahead, don't you? If I jump ahead, this, because there is a break here on these two dates, this is now no longer correct. It needs to be some different data, different index data. So that's the even bigger problem. The styling part is like fun and it's fun to see, but it's the data integrity and making sure that we're showing the right data that's really the bigger issue. It doesn't seem like a bigger issue, but it does affect like everything that you look at. And you want I want what my users see to be not only visually appealing, like this part is important, I'm not going to discount it. We need to make this meaningful and useful to them and make sure that we are communicating what this big yellow block is. But also the rest of the data, the things that they're actually going to be reading, matter. And that's the part that we did not touch on tonight. So I'm going to call that from there. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. Thanks for the good questions. I appreciated that. I will be streaming next week again on Wednesday, I believe. No, not true. I'm on vacation next week, so I won't be streaming. But we'll catch up again in a couple of weeks, and I might have figured this out by then. I do continue to make progress on this app offline. My last project I saved only for the streams, and it was just slow going. So I can't commit to only working on the streams, but I think that's pretty reasonable. I do take this content and I post it up on YouTube. So if you want to give me a like or a follow or whatever you feel like doing, I'm just realizing that running a production's acronym is RIP. That's hilarious. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting distracted. Thank you for joining in. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the future. Take care. Bye.